Izraelski je povjesničar i profesor na sveučilištu u Exeteru. Poznat je po otvorenim stavovima o izraelsko-palestinskom pitanju kojima je izazvao i pohvale i kritike. Autor je nekoliko knjiga, uključujući Etničko, čišćenje Palestine, u kojoj dovodi u pitanje tradicionalni izraelski narativ o uspostavi Izraela 48. Ilan Pappe za Al Jazeeru govori o važnosti globalnog židovskog anticionističkog pokreta, potrebi suprotstavljanja Izraelu i trajnim posljedicama izraelskog rata protiv Gaze. Gospodine Pappe, na početku možemo razgovarati o važnosti židovskog anticionističkog pokreta, koji je došao do izražaja u svijetu posljednjih 7 do 8 mjeseci. Koja je važnost ovog pokreta za primirje, kraj rata i palestinsko pitanje?
I think this is a very important movement of the young people, first in the United States and then in some other parts of the world, who are advocating concrete actions towards what goes on in the Gaza Strip. Not just showing solidarity, but asking their universities to divest from Israeli university, from Israeli businesses. I think this is a practical demand that can have an impact in the long run on Israel as part of the international pressure on Israel. And the fact that you have such a large number of young Jews taking part of it is a very important development, because we already knew that the young Jewish generation in the world in growing numbers do not see themselves as Zionists, but we didn't see that what they do is not just saying we don't identify with Zionism, but we are also identifying with the Palestinians. So I think historically this would be a very important moment, very much like the demonstrations at the time in the United States against the Vietnam War that played a role in getting the Americans out of Vietnam.
Istodobno na zapadu žive takvi mladi židovi. Postoje li razlike između njih i mladih židova u Izraelu?
Yes, unfortunately the vast majority of young Jews in Israel support the state, support its actions against in Gaza against the Palestinians. This is the outcome of indoctrination through educational systems, through the media, through socialization in the army, because it's compulsory service in Israel. And I'm afraid that their worldview does not leave much hope for a change, for reconciliation, and they justify the actions. They take part in the actions as soldiers. And I think we cannot wait for a change from within, and that's why we will have to rely on external pressure if we want to both end the genocide and prevent the next cycle of bloodshed.
Kakav vanjski pritisak biste željeli vidjeti, a za koji smatrate da bi bio učinkovit?
I think what we have now is boycott and divestment, which are mostly actions of civil society. We know from history that really what is effective is sanctions. Civil society cannot take sanctions, but governments can take sanctions. So the question is, will this popular demand for action in order to stop the war, to bring ceasefire, to stop the genocide, to stop the next stages, if this pressure would reach the policymakers? This is now the big question. Would they heed the demands of their societies to exert pressure on Israel? I think this will happen, but it will take some time, because most governments in the West are still unconditionally supporting Israel. Multinational corporations support Israel. And so we have to wait and see when will be the first government that will be bold enough to say we are now representing what our own people want. And this is a non-violent way of stopping the actions on the ground, because I think violence is not a way that can help anyone. So I think people who condemn these actions anti-Semitic should say to the Palestinians, what are you proposing? Because the only alternative to pressure from the outside is a war from the inside. So I think we all should support it, because it's a non-violent means of changing the reality.
Zašto je, da bi se reklo ne Izraelu, potrebno biti hrabar?
Yes, well, I just finished a book called Lobbying for Zionism on both sides of the Atlantic. Lobbying for Israel and Zionism is 100 years old. It's a very powerful structure. In different parts of the world, there are different reasons why Israel enjoys such immunity. Of course, where the Holocaust happened, people of a certain generation feel that they cannot pressure Israel. Then you have Christian Zionists, evangelical Christians, who believe that supporting Israel is a religious thing. Then you have the most cynical interests, military industries, security industries, that see Israel as an asset. But I think vast majority of the young generation in the world, doesn't matter in the West or not in the West, have a moral view about genocides and ethnic cleansing, and therefore I think they will be the counterforce to those forces that either for ideological, theological or strategic reasons are still supporting Israel.
Što mislite o tezi ili argumentima koje često čujemo s izraelske strane, da je Izrael garancija sigurnosti Židova? Je li to točno?
Well, no, Israel is a less safe place for Jews. I mean, it's the only place where Jews are now safe in the world is Israel. Since its creation, 24,000 Jews lost their life. In most other places in the world, Jews were not killed. So Israel is definitely, in terms of statistics of Jews being killed or wounded or even abducted, as we have seen in 7th of October, it's the only place where Jews are under such a danger. So obviously this is not the answer to anti-Semitism. This is not a safe place for Jews. In fact, I think a safe place for Jews is a better world for everyone else who is suffering from racism, victimization. I don't think we should separate the groups. A world that is more equal, less racist, less supremacist, is a world where not only Jews but everyone else would have safer life.
Imate tezu koja glasi da bismo dobili trajno rješenje za Izrael i Palestinu, moramo se osvrnuti na prošlost. Možete li to pojasniti?
Yes. The peace process that the Americans have led since 1967 focuses on the events of 1967. It claims that the conflict between Israel and Palestine is when Israel occupied the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, and we have to find a solution for the fate of the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. But this is not when the conflict began. At least it began in 1948, and the most important outcome of this 48 events was the making of the Palestinian refugee problem. You cannot have a solution that only deals with 20% of Palestine and only half of the Palestinians. I think if you go back to 48, you can see the complete picture that relates to all of Palestine and all the Palestinians, which gives us hope for reconciliation.
Jesmo li svjedoci druge nakbe?
We're witnessing an ongoing Nakba. I don't think that there was a Nakba in 48 and a Nakba in 2024. There is always chapters in the disaster that the Palestinians are suffering because of the Israeli policies of ethnic cleansing. Sometimes it's massive, as it was in 48 and now. Sometimes it's more incremental, more piecemeal. But I don't think that the Nakba ever stopped. And the Nakba for me is this idea that Israel can by force ethnically cleanse the group it doesn't like in order to have a pure Jewish state, and all the means are legitimate and justified. And therefore we are seeing a similar ideology, although of course sometimes like now the actions are far worse than they were in the past.
Kako gledate na izreku da samo zato što ste nekad bili žrtva ne znači da možete zlostavljati druge? Posebno vas to pitam kao nekoga tko je bio veoma otvoren o svojoj i prošlosti svoje obitelji, te o tome kako se osjećate zbog toga što ste Židov i načina na koji se danas oni prikazuju.
Yes, I think unfortunately even on individual level sometimes abused children become abused parents. The many cases where victims became victimizer. So unfortunately, and I'm very sad about it, the fact that so many Jews have suffered from racism, from genocide, does not ensure us that they would not do the same to other people. And that's very sad from a human point of view, because they are not the only people who suffered and caused suffering to others. So we should hope that we can challenge that kind of justification. I lost most of my family in the Holocaust, and for me the lesson for this is that I cannot be part of any crime against other human beings. But apparently most people do not feel like this. Maybe something is wrong with the way we educate people. The media maybe is not doing its job properly. We have to find ways of making sure that people who are victims make sure that other people will not be victims as well. Apparently it doesn't happen automatically. You probably have to educate and create the right environment for that.
Kad je riječ o okruženju, na ovom forumu govorili ste o podjelama u izraelskom društvu. To je nešto čemu smo svjedočili posljednjih nekoliko godina. Postoji određena vrsta nestabilnog demokratskog sustava zbog velikog broja izbora i vlada u kratkom razdoblju. U posljednjih 7 do 8 mjeseci gledali smo prosvjede. Jesu li to podjele i na čemu se one temelje u izraelskom društvu, te kakve bi mogle biti njihove posljedice?
The main divisions in Israeli society are around the definition of what is a Jewish state. There is an agreement that the Jewish state is one in which the Arabs either don't exist, or if they exist, they are second-rate citizens. So this is not the debate. The debate is, does a Jewish state is a liberal democratic state, to my mind apartheid as well, because of the way they will treat the Palestinians, or a theocratic state and a messianic state. So we have a real battle in Israel between, I can call it the state of Tel Aviv, you know, where people see themselves as part of the West, secular, multicultural, unless it's about the Palestinians, where, you know, LGBT community can feel welcome and so on. So this is the kind of Israel they want. And the other Israel, you can call it the state of Jerusalem, where people want the Jewish law to determine the laws of the land, where they are messianic, they believe that the whole of Palestine belongs to them. They're even more racist and supremacist, the other group, but they also treat the other Jews as heretic, unless they are willing to live in a theocracy. And this is the battle. It's a battle between a Jewish theocracy and a liberal Jewish idea of Zionism. And we once thought that the common basis would be the enemy, you know, as they would call it, the danger from the outside. But we see that even after what happened in 7th of October, they don't have a common language. And they're already fighting again in the streets between these two camps. And I cannot see them building a joint basis in the future.
Koliko je ovaj rat u Gazi naštetio poziciji Izraela u svijetu? Njegov imidž potpomognut pinkwashingom kojeg ste ranije spomenuli ili pričom o jedinoj demokraciji na Bliskom istoku. Možda posljedice nećemo vidjeti odmah, ali što mislite koliko je Izrael naštetio sam sebi?
Absolutely. I think that a lot of sections of the Western society that may have been shunned or reluctant to accept that they are dealing with a rogue state and challenging the idea of the only democracy in the Middle East and so on. I think a lot of these people are now convinced that this is not the case. I think that Israel itself contributed to a level of isolation that it has never experienced before, including in some more traditional places where there was automatic support for its policies and ideology. So I think in the long run we will remember this period as very important by turning Israel into a pariah state, very much like apartheid South Africa at the time.